brings you the inside story. Very good evening. Thank you for joining us here. You're watching Business at 9 and I'm Navi Prabhu. Let's begin with our top focus. Prime Minister Narendra Modi, in fact, inaugurated the phase 1 of the Navi Mumbai International Airport, a landmark greenfield project that has been built at a cost of around rupees 19,650 crore. Now, let's tell you that the new airport, spread over 1,160 hectares, is set to significantly boost India's aviation capacity and ease, of course, the heavy traffic burden on Mumbai's existing Chhatrapati Shivaji Maharaj International Airport. Now, before the formal inauguration, the Prime Minister took a walkthrough of the newly constructed facility. You're seeing some of those visuals played on your screens at the moment. But the Prime Minister also earlier today inaugurated the same. That is the final phase of the first fully underground Metro 3, making 33.5 kilometer Aqua Line operational, which will connect RA in the north to Kulava in the south of Mumbai, aiming to ease the congestion on suburban trains and roads as well. Now, we discussed the impact and implications of the big infra push in Mumbai, but first, let's listen into what the Prime Minister had to say on the occasion of the inauguration of the Navi Mumbai International Airport.
आपको याद होगा 2014 में जब देश ने मुझे अवसर दिया तो मैंने कहा था कि मेरा सपना है कि हवाई चप्पल पहनने वाला भी हवाई सफर कर सके। इस सपने को पूरा करने के लिए बहुत जरूरी था कि देश में नए नए एयरपोर्ट बनाए जाए। हमारी सरकार ने इस मिशन पर गंभीरता से काम शुरू किया। बीते 11 साल में देश में एक के बाद एक नए एयरपोर्ट बनते चले गए। साल 2014 में हमारे देश में सिर्फ 74 एयरपोर्ट थे। आज भारत में एयरपोर्ट की संख्या 160 को पार कर गई है।
All right, we heard what the Prime Minister essentially had to say, but let's decode this further for the bigger infrastructure push that the city is looking at. And to decode that, in fact, let me take the opportunity to be introducing my guest this evening. I'm given to understand Sanjay Lazar, CEO of Avilas Consultants, aviation expert and author, is joining us on the show. And in a bit, I'm also given to understand that Professor Chandrasekharan Prabhu, Indian politician, architect and urban planner expert, will be with us. But Sanjay, thank you. Very good evening for joining us here. Let's begin with the fact that what we've essentially looked at here with this big infrastructure push, and Mumbai is clearly entering that new era of infrastructure growth, if we may say so. But how transformative is this, Sanjay, for the city, and what does that also mean for India's broader aviation and urban landscape as well?
Thank you for having me, Nivedna. First of all, this is a red letter day in Indian aviation, in India infrastructure. You've just pointed out about the underground, metro plus this airport. This airport was literally planned almost 40 years ago and was stuck for some reason or the other. I remember, Air India had even set up a colony about 30 years ago. And then, the airport got scrapped and changed. So kudos to the Adani Group. They've done it in record time after they got possession of this company. And this is going to, become a huge facilitator to the growth in the Pune, Mumbai, Navi Mumbai area. Because number one, it will shift a lot of, domestic plus short-haul, long-haul flights to the newer airport, which has a longer runway, which will also be free from obstruction, well planned. It's a greenfield project. Remember, the last greenfield airport project was 2008, when we had Bangalore and Hyderabad open in the same year. And as you know, Adani controls almost 25% of all airports in the country, traffic that is, along with GMR. Each handle, totally half of all the traffic. So this is going to become a huge facilitator. And I can see huge development in terms of real estate, luxury retail, hospitals, everything in that Navi Mumbai, Panvel node, all along the Bombay-Pune Expressway. Yes, there is the issue of connectivity. I do hope the government sorts that out sooner rather than later, because the distance is huge. To travel from, let's say, Andheri or Juhu, it's 1 hour, 45 minutes. To travel from Pune to this airport would also be the same. So I think that's going to be a slight dampener, but I do believe, going forward, we will see, this is the trend in most big metros. You see airports outside the city. People travel to those cities and to those airports and operate flights out of there. So I do believe that this is going to be an absolute game changer. Capacity-wise, in 4 phases, it's scheduled to go up to 90 million, which is a huge number. If you took it on today's metrics.
In fact, we'll break that down in terms of what those numbers are looking like. But, you make very fair points in your opening remarks. And on a lighter note, you're absolutely right, because I come from a city like Bengaluru, and there's always debate about how the airport is on the outskirts of the city. Well, that's a different conversation altogether. In fact, they say you can reach faster from Bengaluru to Mumbai than you would be able to from the insides of the city to the airport. But here's what I want to ask you, given what we're looking at in terms of this airport, right? Internationally, when you look at it, dual airport cities, whether you're talking about London, New York, they succeed, or they've rather succeeded when you're looking at those, stories when how they panned out. It's because of the planning, the connectivity, and the operations are clearly seamless, or at least that's what it seems like. But does Mumbai have the systems and coordination in place to make it as smooth as possible? Of course, it might be a little too soon to indicate that, but how are we looking at it? Are there any pain points that, when you were to look at this, considering the fact that you're saying this might be the new normal for bigger metro cities to have the dual airport system? And we wouldn't be surprised if that growth story is going to change.
Well, to be brutally honest, we failed on that connectivity front. I was a young kid growing up. I remember in London in 77, 78, when the London Underground was being extended to Terminal 1, 2, and 3. And that's, we're talking about a good 45 years ago, 50 years ago. We should have planned this since we knew this airport was coming or in the works for the last 30, 40 years or 20 years at least, some kind of rail network. They've now reached some point, but it's going to be a huge pain point. I think for the South Mumbai people, it'll be fine because they'll come in on the Atal Setu. But for the North Mumbai people, this is going to be a pain point. And, I guess they'll have to either make do with it or wait till the, overhead expressway is made or some kind of connectivity comes in. But yes, it's going to be a significant problem. But not to say that other airports around the world do not have connectivity problems. I travel in and out of London, every second month. And let me tell you, Stansted is like going to another country. So, I'm traveling 1.5 hours to 2 hours on the train to get to Stansted, and I spend almost 40 pounds. So it's not cheap. Whereas Heathrow and Gatwick also are far apart. There's no direct train. There's a bus. So maybe, the government could work on something like that, or maybe the state transport could develop something like that. The other point they'd have to look at is also connecting, direct connectivity between Pune and this airport, because I see a huge push in floriculture, which is Talegaon and all those areas, fruits from Pune and Nasik and Satara and Sangli.
Sanjay, while you speak about that, I'd have to interject you because I want to go back to the point that you were, making initially about the kind of passengers that we're going to look at, the volume as well. Because in your opening remarks, what you did state about how this is that greenfield project and we're looking at it after such a long time, even this had a lot of hurdles. But this is, of course, a positive momentum that we're looking at in terms of that infrastructure push. But just to talk about those numbers, how are we viewing that essentially?
If I had, it's 90 million today is top 4 in the world. So, but we're not doing 90 million today. We're doing 20 million at this airport. Hello? Can you hear me?
Yes, Sanjay. Go ahead.
Sorry. I said 90 million projected at the end of 4 phases would put us today in the top 4 in the world. But we're starting off with 20 million in phase 1, and then we go up to 40, 50, and then 90 million. I would have liked there to be greater capacity than 90 million, but I think they're looking at combined 90 million and 50 million at CSMIA. So, take it to about 150 million. I do believe Mumbai and Greater Mumbai and the Pune area has more capacity that you can eke out. So, I mean, that's, if wishes were horses, we would have had a bigger airport. But this is great for the time being. And I also believe there's ample opportunity for them to expand. If the need is to go beyond 90 million, I think they would go beyond that as well, if needed. The other thing I do believe is now to develop, and like the Prime Minister said, we were 70 odd airports, we are 160 today. The previous aviation minister said by 2030, we'd like to make this 300. So India is on a huge...
I'm going to come back to you as far as that story, the way it has looked at for aviation industry as well, with what he said as to how it was in 2014 compared to what we're looking at now. I'm going to come back to you, Sanjay, but before I do that, I'm given to understand Professor Chandrasekhar Prabhu has in fact joined us as well. Professor Prabhu, thank you very much for taking the time out and joining us here. Looking at it from an urban planning standpoint and with what has happened today, whether we're talking about the airport or the metro three together, how do you think it's really reshaping Mumbai's functions as a megacity, and are we in fact seeing a coherent multi-nodal growth strategy, which is of course positive?
Not at all. You see, world over, first they create an infrastructure, they create connectivity, and then the infrastructure portion comes in. We create the infrastructure and then search like, 10 blind men and the elephant. Then you search for the connectivity. So connectivity is just not there. Atal Setu, incidentally, was planned, a good 25 years ago. I used to be on the board of MMRDA, and I remember having given finishing touches to the master plan of Trans-Harbour Link. So if somebody feels that Trans-Harbour Link has just come in right now in the past 4, 5 or 10 years, they are totally mistaken. The idea of the Trans-Harbour Link has been there for 25 or 30 years. The calculations, the construction, the detailings and the maps were all done. It is just that it is now coming to fruition. Like most things in India, we take time to complete our mega projects. It took time to reach this kind of a project. And that's how the airport, initially this site was rejected for the airport. There were 3 alternative places that were selected to be Mumbai's airport. And the most chosen was the Rewas Mandwa portion in the Alibag area. And that was chosen. And when the land acquisition started, the government perhaps realized that all the lands were owned by the who's who of the film industry, the who's who of the Indian industry, the who's who of the media. And so if their lands are to be acquired, it was a no-go situation. And hence that project, after making the detailed project report, and finding that to be the most feasible of the 3 alternatives that were discussed, was abandoned. The next was the airport in Navi, Mumbai itself, but then Navi Mumbai land was to be used for commercial exploitation, and hence...
I want to see that from your vantage point. I want to ask you this, if the way... Right. But the way we're looking at it, rather than with what you have put into perspective in your opening remark, that if it's first built and then thought about, then who's to blame for the current situation if that's how we were to look at it?
You see, it is very simple. We knew that the airport was to come. And, between the inauguration, between the groundbreaking ceremony and inauguration, it's been 8 years. So in 8 years, necessary infrastructure could have been built. There was no question of it not being built. But it was not built for whatever reasons. So while we pat ourselves on our back when the airport is being inaugurated, someone needs to take the blame for not providing the necessary infrastructure and connectivity to the airport, which could have been done simultaneously while the construction of the runway was going on, while those big hills were being raised to ground level, while millions of tons of soil was being transported away, while the flow of the river was sought to be changed to accommodate the two runways of the airport. While that was being done, we could also have provided.
Although you do make those points in terms of how you're looking at and the pain points over here for how that's panned out. Of course, Sanjay was, looking at it from a very different point of view in terms of that growth story as well. But I'm afraid we'd have to leave the conversation at that. Sanjay, thank you as well. And Professor Prabhu, we're running short of time, in fact, but thank you for joining us this evening on Business at 9. For the moment, we're slipping into a quick break here. Stay with us. We're going to be right back with lots more on the other side this evening.